Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Hello, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Well, thank you so much for spending some of your valuable time with me here today. Whether you're listening while you're working out in the morning, you're out for your morning run, or it's the end of the day and you're just sort of relaxing, taking in a little mojo, I thank you for listening to us. And I think you're really going to enjoy our guest today. It's Dr. Tabor Smith. He began his career in one of the largest chiropractic offices in the state of Texas, where he was in charge of spinal screenings, and he learned all the marketing strategies it takes to build a 1,400 visit per week practice. Throughout his career, he's performed hundreds of spinal screenings and meticulously refined and perfected his techniques. He now coaches chiropractors all over the world on how to share their unique message of health and bring in a flood of new patients using his simple methods. Welcome, Dr. Tabor Smith.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and feel free to jump in and fill in any of those gaps that I might have smoothed right over.
I think you got it pretty much. I know I'm used to the world of podcasting. I've done one or two, and I know just being an avid listener that long intros and bios are not fun to listen to. So I think you nailed pretty much all the important stuff right there.
Yeah, I used to go into a lot more detail, and just in the 50 or so episodes I've done, I've drastically reduced it down just so we can get to the good stuff soon.
The meat and potatoes.
You got that right. Well, look, I checked out your website, speaking of meat and potatoes, and there is a ton of great information on there. Do you mind sharing with us a little of the highlights of some of the trainings you provide?
Sure. Yeah. My goal was to really try to provide value to my patients coming in, and give them something that's unique from me as well, so that they feel like they're in a place that they're getting something that they can't anywhere else. And I think on the first page of my website, do you mind if I give my website for my practice?
Go ahead.
It's just HoustonTXChiropractor.com, but I give away an ebook for anybody that goes to that site, which, it's usually locals looking for a chiropractor. But the ebook that I created is called How to Get Healthy and Feel Great 30 Days at a Time. And it's really just a few chapters out of my book, Healthcare or Sick Care, it's your choice. But what it does is it helps people to kind of track their health choices and start to become aware of what they're doing every day. I think that's one of the biggest things I try to teach, is that we need to be proactive versus reactive. And, our healthcare system right now is really a sick care system. It's reactive. It's not choosing, the right path and then preventing a lot of those things. So that giveaway, I call it, and I really think that chiropractors should be giving away something in exchange for an email address on their website. That has helped me to grow an email list around my area and be able to keep in touch with a lot of people I never would have otherwise. But I also try to teach spinal hygiene, and I think that's important. I think dentists have done a great job of teaching that dental hygiene. Obviously, when you brush, when you floss. Well, I think there are things that we need to do about our spine to be able to keep it healthy. Some stretches and exercises we can even do at home. So I created the website homespinalcare.com, and it has a book I wrote about that on it, which is absolutely free to download for my patients and for anybody that my patients refer to that site as well. But I think it's just about giving value and trying to create value, and that's always been a big value of mine, a big intent that I try to create something periodically that my patients really like. So.
Yeah, I find more and more in the world of marketing, if you want to use that term, that you have to really provide the value first. And if you can do that, you're going to grab someone's attention at least, and they feel like you've already given them a benefit, and they're more likely to want to establish that relationship with you and go forward from there.
I think what you just hit on is, you hit the nail on the head when you said that. This is the new world of marketing, and the old world of marketing was print ad, yellow pages, try to create an ad, a slogan that was catchy, and all these types of things. And that is not what today's marketing is. Today's marketing is education and creating that thing that person wants to help them to achieve that goal, and try to give them a little taste of that before they even come into your office. That's what marketing is to me anyway.
So I want to stop real quick and just talk to you. I have not gone to your local practice website, but do you have one of those pop-ups that jumps up on the screen after about 10 seconds and says, hey, opt in and check out our guide to healthy living? Or how do you approach that on your website? I
don't. Not that I think that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that I build all my own websites, and I've never got savvy into that plugin or how that really even worked. But I do think right now they're overused, and I think that they used to be really great. Now when people kind of go to close out their page and there's a pop-up that comes up, usually they just close it, but it does give you a last chance, or, a little bit of an effort to focus on gathering their name and email. So I don't think there's a problem with it at all. Mine is focused on the top half of the page. There is that offer. So the very top of the page, I want my phone number. I want some kind of headline that's going to grab them. Why do people come to your office? Is it pain? If it is, then mention something about pain. And not only, I think mine says something about not only feel great, but get, start achieving amazing health or something like that. But whatever it is, capture them with a little bit of a headline. But then right below that is give them something and allow them to opt in, so you can capture their name and email, so you can communicate with them later on.
Well,
that's at least what I do.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple of things so far in terms of what we can offer, some patient education. And what are the other things that you talk about for chiropractors, the trainings that you offer? What other tools are there?
Oh, yeah. Well, specifically for chiropractors, I work closely with Dr. Zano. He's a business partner of mine, Dr. Chris Zano, and we put together chirothoughtleaders.com. And there's just an absolutely unbelievable amount of information at chirothoughtleaders.com. That's all free. You can opt in and start receiving information on how to build a big practice, how to get your procedures down. I also do spinal screening training. I've been doing that since I actually was going to chiropractic college, working for other chiropractors doing spinal screenings. And if it wasn't for spinal screenings, my office wouldn't be here today. I was, when I opened my own office, and I hustled and I got out there, as much as I possibly could. And I got really good at doing screenings. At least I got a system down that worked, a large percentage of the time. And so I started helping other chiropractors learn that, and they asked me if I would put it down on paper for them and get their scripts to their employees and all this things. So I actually put it in a program, and it's at spinalscreenings.com, spinal screenings with an S. And there's actually a lot of free info there too for chiropractors. If they want help with that, they can just go there and opt in and start receiving some free videos as well.
That's great. I've done some spinal screenings, and I've never been fantastic at them. At least I didn't think so. What are some of the strategies you've used? Can you share those with us?
Sure. I think one of the things about spinal screenings is chiropractors, some of them feel like just because we have a DR in our name doesn't mean we need to actually get out there and hustle and market. In fact, I think that's the opposite. I think we need to look at ourselves more as an entrepreneur. Until we start to grow this big practice, then we can worry about, what other people think or respect us or whatever. But if you don't have a successful business, you don't have a career. And so many chiropractors, they're just slacking in that area, and they're not getting out there in front of people. And with a screening, sure, I would rather go do a massive talk to a huge audience. But with a screening, I can be somewhere every weekend. I could be at the large events. I can be in front of people, and that's the most important thing when you're trying to grow your practice. I have a couple of pieces of advice for people who are looking for great screenings. Number one, if you're an established practice already, and it's not like you have to really get out there and your life depends on a new patient. then I would focus on just large events. My office does that now, where I used to, if you're a new doc out there and you're like, your business does depend on a new patient, get out there every weekend, find a vitamin store, find a grocery store, find a gym, and just get out there and put a booth up and get your spine and just start checking spines. We're chiropractors. That's our job, is to check spines. It's not like you're just marketing. You're actually providing a value to the community by really checking their spine and giving them an evaluation. But if you're a larger practice, going back to that, look for those big events. That's what we do. Find a big venue in your area. In my local area, there's a large convention center called the Berry Center. And I want to know their schedule. I want to know what events are there. We actually have one coming up here in a couple of weeks. It's a big health fair, a giant health fair that they're doing over there at the convention center. We bought a booth. We're going to be there, and we're going to get some new patients from that. The biggest event that I do every year is a home and garden show. So it has nothing to even do with your health, but it's packed full of people. There's thousands in attendance, and they pay to get in. They actually pay $8 at the door to get in. So they're paying to come to my booth to see what I have there and see what I have to offer. So no wonder, that's one of our most successful events.
Yeah. Now, are those pretty geographically close to your office? Or, is it,
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I made the mistake of going way too far a couple of times, and I learned quickly that you have to stay in a geographic area. I would say maybe depending on your demographics, of course. But for me, I try to stay in about a 15-mile radius, 20-mile radius.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. For your screenings, are you using something like an Insight Millennium? Are you doing this by palpating? How are you doing this?
I used to use the Insight. We would do the thermography, or we would do the Surface EMG. And if you have that machine, I think it works amazingly well. I projected it up on a TV or a projector, and that way people walking by can really see, and it's kind of an eye draw. Right now, we actually transferred everything over. We use a simple iPad, and we use an app called the Posture Screen Mobile. It's amazing. It's put out by CBP, Chiropractic Biophysics, which is an entity that I'm certified in. And it allows you to use the Apple TV to actually project it onto a TV as well. And it's amazingly accurate. I highly recommend everyone out there, if you haven't downloaded the app, even on your phone, that you can get it on Android or iPhone, is check out Posture Screen Mobile. It's a beautiful, beautiful app.
Very cool. Well, let me ask you this. It comes down to, you're hopefully, at least like you said, for the new docs, you're hoping to get some new patients out of it, and even for some established docs. But that doesn't always happen, that conversion and booking the appointment. Any tips you have for people to make that happen?
Conversions are always something that we're working on to improve. And I think every office is working on improving that, not just in your screenings, but in your day one, day two process, and converting them to care, in every area of your office. I think the first thing that you have to focus on, though, is not the conversions. The first thing that you have to focus on is getting in front of more people. Increasing your numbers always increases the amount of people that you convert. Always. So for instance, I remember I was having some trouble with conversion. I was thinking, man, all these new patients are coming in, and some of these aren't converting to care. What's my problem? So I went and I called up a good friend, mentor of mine, Dr. Philip Cordova. He runs 2 very large offices here in Houston. Asked him if we could have coffee together, and I brought this load of paperwork, and I was like, these are my plans. This is what I'm doing. This is my procedures. How can I increase my conversions? And he looked over and he's like, how many new patients are you getting a month? And that was back then. I was like, 20, 20, 30. And he's like, well, there's your problem. You don't have a procedure problem. You don't have a conversion problem. You have a new patient problem. You need to get out there and hustle. And then when we tripled our new patient numbers, and guess what also tripled? Our conversions and our income and everything else. So I would first of all really, really focus on increasing your numbers. Secondly, of course, it's important to focus on your procedures, on your scripting. You practice what you're going to say. You get confident about what you're going to say. You start listening to, reading green books, listening to chiropractic audios, listening to podcasts like this one right here. And you continually strengthen your confidence in what you do, and your passion and your commitment to chiropractic. And I think that in itself there will raise your conversions better than anything else will.
Well, I want to shift and talk about one of your major accomplishments, and that's writing a book. I think I include myself in a group of people that I would love to write a book, and I've talked to other people that would like to do that as well, but it seems like such a daunting task. So how can someone go about that? How do they start?
Well, that's a good question, and my books aren't, they're not published by a big publishing company. They're not New York Times bestsellers, and they're not really even that thick. They're really kind of easier reads. But what I did was strategically try to put my philosophy into a book, and then I try to put it in everything else as well. So and this is like, what I would recommend chiropractors do, or what any business owner do, is you take your career, you know what I mean? Like everything that you believe, everything that you would want your client to know, and you put it in a book. Because that's the same information you're going to put in a video. That's the same information you're going to put in a blog. That's the same information you're going to put in flyers that you hand out in your office. That's the same information that you're going to use when you're doing table talk, when people come in your office. And you're just pounding this same philosophy, the same information, as many different forms, as many different times as you can get it in this person's hand, in this person's head, because that's the lifeblood of what you do. And that's what I did with my books, is I don't have a book that's about basketball, or a book that's about anything else. It's just, I have healthcare or sick care. It's your choice, which is something I'm very passionate about, that, we don't need to be reactive. Our healthcare system is not a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. So if you want to wait till you get sick, then get into the healthcare system, that's fine. But why don't we start taking care of your health today, not wait till you get sick, start looking for the cause instead of just covering up a symptom, and that's something I put in my first book. And, I try to give it to all my patients. I try to have them read it. And then the second book that I wrote was called At Home Spinal Care. And that's really about spinal hygiene, like we were talking about, taking care of your spine. I think there's something that we could do every day on a daily basis. Even if you don't go to a chiropractor as much as you should, look at dentistry. I probably don't go to the dentist as much as I should. I go maybe every 6 months, maybe less than that. But I brush my teeth twice a day. I floss. I do things at home that help take care of my teeth. And then you know what? That keeps me attached to dentistry. That helps keep me making sure that I'm actually going to visit a dentist. And that's why dentistry is the second largest healthcare profession in the world, is because they've been able to get into our households and be able to get dental hygiene in there. And so what I want to do with my patients is get spinal hygiene in their household, be able to, tell them they need to be laying on spinal molding rolls. They need to be doing range of motion exercises. They need to be doing these things, and teach the kids to do these things, because spinal hygiene matters. So, that's really the reason why I created the books, was be like, this is just another way to get this information, and it's down on paper and it's in someone's hand. The how-to, so that's a little bit about the why. I guess I wrote the book, but the how-to, what I did and I found useful was I just created an outline, and that helped create the book. And so I outlined, the chapters, but I didn't really think of them as chapters. I just said, if someone came into my office, and let's say I had hours with them, it was just me and them sitting on the couch, and my job was to tell them everything in those couple of hours. I mean, everything that I wanted them to know about chiropractic, about their spine. How would I outline that? I would put, top, I would put, the spine should be straight from the front. It should have natural curves from the side. That would be my first bullet point. And then I would explain why that is and some of the research behind it. Maybe I'd go into CBP. And then what's the next bullet point? Well, the spine should move through a full range of motion. Really? Okay. So then under that bullet point, I might put, well, how do we know it should move through a full range of motion? Well, there's all these studies. There's this, and this, and this. And then that would begin the outline that would eventually turn into a book. You could even take your outline, and I didn't do this. I actually wrote my book, and then I'm really not that great of a writer, so then I had to hire an editor to make it sound right and take all the grammar problems out. But you could even take that outline, and there's people who will ghostwrite your book based on your outline, and it's still your information because you created that outline. But I think a book is good to have. People come in the office and they see a couple of books with my picture on them, and they're like, wow, Dr. Tabor wrote a book. I think it gives you a little bit of an authority, type of feeling inside that person. It's not going to make your practice explode, but I think it's something cool that I was very proud of. So
yeah, what a great thing to put in someone's hands, like you said, to get them familiar with how you look at things. And, I think we all attract the style of patient that's really in tune with the style of treatment that we offer. And what a great way to give them something to do on their own to really, I guess, underscore that relationship.
And here's a good example of taking that information that you want your patient to know and putting it in all these different avenues of them to be able to consume it, is that book, At Home Spinal Care. What I did recently with it was, just like me and you were recording this podcast, I actually recorded myself reading the entire book, just like they would make an audio book, right? And then I sent that audio file to a company that created kind of a cartoon, that would represent this book that I just read. And then I put it into a DVD and I play it in my waiting room. So now they're getting this book, as they're watching, as they're doing their exercise disc or they're wobbling or whatever, they're seeing the book, created as a cartoon. And so many people get so much more out of it, even though they tell me they've read the book, which they probably didn't. I noticed that they're learning way more even when I turned it into a video. So I don't think you can just create one type of media. I think you need to take what you're teaching and try to fit it into every different type of media you possibly can.
Yeah, I think what you're telling me gets me excited because, one of the things I've tried to do in my practices is to customize and have the things that reflect, my philosophy and values in my office. And I've seen other chiropractic DVDs that are out there that you can buy from other folks, and it's, it might look dated. You might not agree with what the guy's talking about, or maybe just the manner in which it's presented isn't really representing your office well. So I think the idea of creating your own content to create your own sort of ecosphere within your office is just it's great we can do this now with digital technology. Even 10 years ago, all this wasn't possible.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Well, I want to shift and talk to you a little bit more about the marketing side of things. Now, do you do all of the marketing yourself for your office, or do you have someone that you hire?
So both, because I do most of the marketing as far as I'm really trying to set up talks. I do dinner workshops. I do probably 2 or 3 outside presentations and lunch and learns a week. And then also with the screenings, I'm starting to delegate that more to my associates, but I go to the really big, large screenings that we have. And I pay whoever it is, I'll pay anyone based on results. So we have a lady that sets up lunch and learns for us and sets up talks, and she makes $300 a talk that she sets up. And I pay her happily every time she sets up a talk because it's worth way more than that to me. My staff knows that there's bonuses when they set up a talk or presentation. I have one front desk girl that is just absolutely amazing. That's half her day she spends on the phone trying to set up talks because she'll make, based on how many people come in for an exam, she'll make an amount of money, or how many people sign up for care, she'll make like $100 for a person that actually starts care. And by the way, disclaimer, I don't know in what states that's legal or anything. I do it because I believe it's fair, being able to pay on results. But she makes like $1,000 a week bonus sometimes. And so then my associates, when they do screenings, they will receive the exam fee, the entire exam fee. So they know even if the person doesn't sign up for care, they're getting paid to be there. And then they would also get an extra bonus for people who do start care. I think they make $250 for every person that starts care as an extra bonus on top of their salary. So we send out a lot of bonus checks, but I love that because that means that we're actually doing really well when we can pay out more bonus checks.
Yeah, what a great way to incentivize your staff and have them really all in on this, what you're doing, and a great way to duplicate your efforts, have a whole team of people out there working for you.
Right on.
Well, this show is all about providing actionable content for our listeners, and it's divided up between the new docs and the experienced docs. So do you have a single step that someone can implement tomorrow, let's say for a new doc, or this could be a series of steps, but something they can start doing tomorrow?
Let's see. Hustling, if you're a new doc. I think that so many docs come out of school with we think that it's just going to be handed to us, and you don't realize that's a time in your career where you have to hustle the most. Like, I remember just starting my practice. If I didn't have a screening that weekend, I didn't have a new patient that week. I mean, that's literally how it was. And so I had to make sure that I was trying to get every weekend, I was trying to get somewhere to set up a booth so that I could have a new patient that week. And you know, I had to put everything else aside and say, am I going to make this business successful or not? Another thing I would tell new doctors coming out is to bootstrap. This was one of the best advice I'd ever gotten, was from a mentor of mine, Dr. Shane Hand. He told me, because I worked for him for 2 years as an associateship before I started my practice. And he told me, he's like, if I had anything to do all over again, the only thing that I would change is I would not borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a practice. I would try to bootstrap. I would try to start with as low as I possibly can and then build up. And we did that. We started our practice with $10,000 that we had saved up. And it was tough and it was hard making it through. But like I said, it made me hustle and get out there and work for it. And then we opened a second office the beginning of this year, and we opened it even though, you know, we could have borrowed money now. I actually could have got the loan. We didn't, and we ended up starting our second practice with $20,000. And so I would highly recommend new docs, don't get into debt. Try your best at least to keep the debt low and really work hard, and it's just going to be better and easier for you in the long run.
That's fantastic advice. I wish more new docs would take it. I talk to a lot of new docs, and I'll look over their plans, their business plans, and things like that. And there's not a bootstrapping mentality. It's almost like,
right,
this is the best table, and I'm going to start with it, and I'm going to be closed on Fridays, and you know.
Right. Yeah.
They're
already in their golf game.
Right. Yeah, and you know, and anybody, that's not how it's done. At least, you know, once you're established, you have other options. And what I tell them is, hey, this is version 1.0. You're going to go in there, and your goal is to survive. And then we're going to talk about thriving. But right now, you'll never have the opportunity to thrive if you put yourself in this position.
Agreed.
Well, what about for the established doc? The doc that's been out there a while, they've tried this, they've tried that. Things aren't maybe going the way they had hoped, and they're stuck.
Yeah. You know, any doc out there, any chiropractor out there that's what they would call stuck, or what they might even call uninspired at the moment, I would recommend that you go to seminars. That is the one thing that can turn you around like night and day. Going to Cal Jam was absolutely, every time I go to Cal Jam, and I haven't been every year, but I come back so fired up and ready to just just put in the work, and it's so much fun after you get pumped up at one of those seminars. It doesn't mean you don't have to put in the work, but at least it means that you're inspired to do the work. I would say new beginnings. I would say some of those big, strong philosophy-based seminars that you go to, you'll come back fired up with passion and energy. And most of the docs out there, they know how to do a lot of this. If you've been practicing for 10 years, even 5 years, you know how to do the marketing, you know how to adjust, but you just get, it's not easy. I mean, I'll tell you, being a chiropractor, I always have deep, deep, deep respect for those chiropractors who have been practicing for 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, and they're still going to work every single day, doing the monotonous stuff like adjusting. It's hard on your body. It's hard on getting out there. It's hard on trying to get to a lecture, trying to do a lunch and learn, and then fly back to the office so that you can continue adjusting. It's like, it does get monotonous. Even though I think I have the greatest job in the world, there are some times where on Friday you just lay back at the end of the adjusting set on the table and go, oh my God, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I have a deep respect for chiropractors who push through that. And I think part of it, and I think even those guys that have been practicing 35, 40 years, they'll tell you, they go to seminars to get pumped up, to be around their brethren, to be around their friends, and to see that everybody else is doing it, and they're really changing lives and changing the world. And I think we forget that.
That's great advice. I think the job can be kind of isolating. We talk to people all day. We put our hands on people all day. But at least in my office for a long time there, it was just me and a CA. And, that outreach and I guess connection with the people that are our cohorts is great. You really do get a recharge out of that. Plus you can share back and forth information and success stories.
You know what? As something I didn't mention, in today's day and age, you can jump on webinars. You can be live, digitally as well, even if you don't have the money to travel to seminars. There's a lot of people right now doing live events online that will help you get, pumped up and inspired, you listening to podcasts, putting this stuff into your head and your mind. And then you can go to live events whenever they come to you, if money is a factor. And then you do that enough. I believe your money will be a result of you being passionate about what you do,
Absolutely. Well, I want to take a step back and really talk about the bigger picture and worldview and life view. So you've obviously had a lot of success. You've got a second office you've opened up, and we learn a lot from those successes, but we learn even more from challenges or obstacles we've faced. Do you mind sharing with us something that you have had, a challenge or an obstacle, and how you've overcome that?
Definitely the hardest thing in my life to this date that ever happened was my son Jaden. When he was born, had pretty severe heart defects. He's a twin. His brother Jace had no heart defects at all. But that not only was hard to get through because it's your kid, it shook my philosophy to the core. And it ended up making my philosophy a lot stronger on the other side. But there I was with twins. One of them, everything was developed properly. The other one, there were quote unquote what they called defects. And I'm teaching that innate intelligence is inside your body, always doing what's right for you, always doing things that are best for you, and always fighting for you on your behalf. And then all of a sudden, my own kids come out with some kind of issue or problem, and it was very, very hard for me to digest. And I didn't know if I should depend on the medical system at that time. I didn't understand really the delineation between when there's a medical problem and when there's a chiropractic problem. I was just so deeply engulfed in chiropractic that I was like, I don't want to make the wrong decision. I don't want to throw my kid into a medical system, but I want to do whatever's right for my kid. And I just will tell the audience how it shaped my philosophy and made it so much stronger. And it's actually helped my practice grow because of the strength and the story that I tell my patients is that, we call them heart defects, but that innate intelligence in that baby is so amazing that it will do whatever it takes to try to prolong life. The innate intelligence in Jaden's body and my little boy's body is the only reason why he's still here today. And he had 3 heart defects. The first one was transposition of the great vessels. So the artery, the aorta and the pulmonary artery were switched and they were backwards. And so I didn't really understand the complication of that at first. And I dove into embryology and development. And at the end of development, that is supposed, they stay in that alignment. And then at the end of development during the heart, when it finishes its full development, it actually twists and it turns and it gets in the proper position. Well, Jaden's never twisted at the end of development. It never turned and it never got into that proper position. It stayed in a transposition. And but I realized if he would have only had that one defect, transposition of the great vessels, he wouldn't have lived past the cord cutting. That would have been, it would have been over at that point. There would have been no way for his body to get oxygen to his cells. And so innate intelligence and its divine, amazing intelligence, it caused it, I'm going to call it a defect, but it's not a defect. It left a hole in the center of the heart called a ventricular septal defect that allowed oxygenated blood from the left side of his body to get through that hole to the right side of his body. Then I did more research. If that would have been the only 2 defects that he had was transposition of the great vessels and ventricular septal defect, he would have only lived for, a few moments to even maybe a day, depending on how fast we got care to him. Because what happens is the right side of your body, the entire body would have pushed and backed up so much blood into his lungs, he would have drowned in his own fluid. So innate intelligence, again, and it's divine intelligence, it caused a 3rd defect, which was pulmonary stenosis. And that's a tightening of the pulmonary artery that protected his lungs from that happening. And it also caused a pressure gradient that pushed more oxygenated blood through the ventricular septal defect to the right side of the body. And then that meaning that he was virtually born symptom free. Like you could not tell the difference between him and his brother as far as his function, as far as even his color. He was maybe a slight cyanotic, a little bit more than his brother, but you really couldn't even tell. And I realized after diving into this, that there was probably a cause to this. There's a cause to everything, just like there's a cause to blood pressure or a cause to high cholesterol or whatever it is. There may have been a toxin that was introduced during my wife's pregnancy. It may have been even a predisposition to a genetic factor, that a missing piece of DNA or broken that didn't cause that development in his heart. Or my wife she had an 18-degree scoliotic curve right in the area where the nerves go to the uterus, and we've been able to get that down to 9 degrees, been able to do spinal correction on her, and she gets adjusted every week, but it's not perfect, right? Sometimes it's never perfect. So whatever factor it was that interfered in that process, innate intelligence took over. And then, yes, thank God there are amazing medical professionals who did an open heart surgery, who did corrective care on his cardiovascular system, is what I call it. We do corrective care on the spine. They had to do corrective care on his cardiovascular system. But then I tell my patients, after the last stitch was put in Jaden's chest and his sternum went back together, it was wired together, the last stitch went into the skin, it's up to Jaden's amazing innate intelligence to heal that. There's nothing else that can grow Jaden's sternum and chest back together. There's nothing else that could mend the skin from the incision that the doctor made. It's Jaden's amazing innate intelligence, and that's why we want his nervous system free of interference, and that's why I adjust my kiddos. And I believe the reason Jaden's here as well is he was adjusted right at birth within the first 30 minutes of birth. And I think that made a huge, huge difference on the reason why he's still here today. So that still is a tough one for me. And it's something that, of course, for the rest of his life, he has to kind of deal with a little bit. He was handed that card, but he's going to get the best advice from me as far as natural healthcare goes. And it certainly was something that once we got through was a big triumph.
Well, as a father of 4, I can only imagine what it's like to go through something like that as a parent, and tough on the kid. But wow, thank you for sharing such a personal and powerful story.
You bet.
Well, when it comes to the word successful, if you think about that word, who do you picture and why?
That's a really good question. Because I've battled with this back and forth, and it may be something that there's listeners out there that do the same. Is I battle with understanding the word success fully, because I grew up where we didn't have a lot of money, and there were things that I definitely wanted that I did without, and there were times where maybe even embarrassing times, where we didn't have the money to pay for something. And so I grew up thinking that success was money. I need it. I got to have money for my family. I don't want my kids to have to go through the things that I did and be without the things that I did. But even then, I think that drives me to work harder. But at the same time, having kids, as you know, when you have kids, you realize that that's not what success is all about. As soon as that kid is born, you're like, oh my God, this is what life is all about. It's that family, it's that love that you have. And then, what you realize as you grow a business, especially one, I think we're fortunate as chiropractors, to have something that we can be really passionate about. And for me, if I was on a road crew or something, I would just have a hard time getting passionate about building a road, but I'm not, hopefully the people who do it are passionate about it. Right. But I'm passionate about chiropractic, and that makes it fun for me. So I'm so blessed to be a chiropractor. I'm so blessed to be a dad. I'm so blessed to actually have the money to put food on the table and then buy, some extra things that we need. So I really have learned lately that success is not just about money. It's about having, I don't want to say balance, but, just having all those areas of life where there's just fulfillment. And I think Tony Robbins actually comes to mind when I think about success, just because he was the one that said, people who are rich, he's worked with billionaires, and he's like, just because you have the money does not mean you're going to have the happiness. It's the fulfillment that matters. So you could have a less amount of money, you could be fulfilled, or you could be a billionaire and you could be fulfilled. But it's about determining what that fulfillment is. And then if you can achieve fulfillment in your life, whether it's money, whether it's family, whether it's spiritual, whatever it is that it fulfills you, that's success.
Well, do you have any daily rituals or habits, affirmations, anything that you do every day to really help you structure your life and your day and find success?
So I've tried my hardest to do what, because I have been, speaking of the word success, I've been chasing success. And Jim Rohn even says, success is not something you can ever chase and capture. It's something that you have to become the person that will attract the success. So you can't chase it. It has to come to you because of the person that you've become. So I have tried to implement specific strategies where I've watched Eben Pagan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but I bought his Wake Up Productive program, and I try to implement it every day. I moved in with a mentor of mine before I got married. I lived with him for 90 days, and he would get up at 3:55 in the morning, and we would do prayer, meditation, journaling, exercise, and then we would go to the office. And I did it, every single morning. And then I've never been able to implement that structured ritual and do it every single day like a machine, like some people do. So I realized that sometimes your ritual has to be customized to you, and it doesn't have to be something that is specifically, something you get out of a book that's called Miracle Mornings or something like that, because I read that book. But I think it's something that helps you to perform better. So for me, I asked myself, well, what would help me to get more done and perform better? So my ritual would start the night right before I go to bed. I think about, first thing in the morning, what's one thing that I want to get done? Usually it's sending an email, because I try to send emails every morning or at least sometime mid-morning, either an email blast to my chiropractors that are following us, or even to my patients. And then that next morning, I know what my first thing on the list is. I'm up early. I actually drink coffee, but then I don't make sure that I follow it with a big bottle of water. And then I'm either sitting down at my desk here or getting to the office early, which I think is a ritual of mine. I love getting there early before anybody else does, because I can just think and I can just do my stuff. I can send my email. And then I've also tried to be really regimental with my exercise, and it just hasn't worked for me yet. Maybe it's because I have twin 2-year-olds right now. So I decided, you know what? As long as I get my exercises in, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be happy. So sometimes I'll go at lunch. Sometimes I'll go in the evening when I get home. I actually noticed that sometimes in the evening when I get home, I can't go because now kids are asleep. I'm trying to help my wife. So I bought a kettlebell, and I learned some kettlebell routines to do at home, in a 15, 20-minute exercise there. And so instead of creating this structured ritual every day that I do, I try to just do what Eben Pagan says, manufacture success. So I think about the things that what would be success for me? Well, success is if I drink enough water every day. Success is if I exercise at least 3 times in a week. Success is if I, if I did something to grow my business. And so to manufacture success means to set yourself up to achieve those things. So you set the water out every morning. You create your breakfast that you're going to eat the next day. Or you say, okay, this is already Thursday and I have not been to the gym yet. That means I have to do it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I have no choice, And so you're manufacturing success and thinking like a year ahead. If I don't do this every week, I'm not going to be there in 1 year. And that's been my best ritual and keeping me doing the things I need to do. So it hasn't been real structured, but it's there every week.
Yeah, if I could summarize for a little bit, it sounds like you're saying, you have a success framework, and then you have some fluidity that, it allows for real life in there. But that framework is, hey, I'm going to work out that 3 times a week. And I see that in...
I love that, yeah.
In terms of, following, if I could use an analogy, following scripts in chiropractic. I'd much rather tell people find a success framework and choose your own words instead of memorizing some script that isn't you, that's going to be rigid and really hard to follow.
Absolutely.
Well, we are in the home stretch in this interview. I want to talk to you about a couple of other things before you go. Do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend?
I have 2 favorite books. One of them I always recommend because most people have read and most people that you interview will recommend this book. But I think you're crazy if you haven't read Think or Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
It's a great one.
But the book that really changed my life and really switched my mindset when it comes to entrepreneurship is it's called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Love it.
And it's not even about chiropractic really, and it's hard to even... our chiropractic model of business, it's hard to even extrapolate, but it makes you think differently. And that's when I really started. It really was a big shift in my success for sure when I read that book. I didn't just read it either. I mean, I made my own workbook. I wrote out outlines after it. I mean, I studied it, and it's just an awesome book.
Yeah, I reread it earlier this year because it is filled with so much valuable information and, a mindset shift.
Yeah.
And even though it's not chiropractically related directly to being a chiropractor, it is directly related to figuring some things out, getting more done in your day and in your life. And it was mind blown, after I read that book. So wonderful recommendation.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the best business advice you have ever received?
Let's see. Well, honestly, I think the reason why we've done so well and kept our debt so low and profit higher is that the business advice we talked about with Dr. Shane, how he told us to bootstrap, start and not get crazy about our spending, but actually focus on, being great adjusters, providing great care and providing a great service. And you don't have to have all these bells and whistles and crazy expensive machineries to provide great service. It's fine if you do, for those clinics who understand that model, maybe that's a great thing. But for me, it would be to be conservative with your spending, but be over delivering when it comes to your service.
Well, what is the best way for people to reach you, find out more about you? You had a couple websites you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and share any social media, anything.
Sure. Find me on Facebook, and if you just search Tabor Smith, Tabor, on Facebook, I should be on there. I do have Houston Chiropractor Facebook page as well, but I think one of the best things to do is to get on an email list. I try to send out a lot of value to chiropractors. You could go to chirothoughtleaders.com and you get on mine and Dr. Zano's email list. You can go to spinalscreenings.com and get on my email list. And you also get a lot of value and a lot of training from those websites as well.
Well, thanks so much for spending time with us here today, and thank you for all you are doing for chiropractors. I think the more that we can help each other out, it's the better off we'll all be, and especially the public, because more of us are going to get to utilize what we do every day.
Amen. I'm with you on that. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.